Hello there, Comics Alliance fans. This is Matt Wilson, co-host and producer of the War Rocket Ajax podcast, here once again to introduce a clip from next week's episode of War Rocket Ajax, which you can find at warrocketajax.com on Monday. The clip that you're about to hear is Chris Sims, my co-host, and myself talking about 3 of the comics that came out this week and reviewing them. We're going to be talking about Grayson number 2 from DC Comics. We're going to be talking about Genius from Image Top Cow. And then we're going to wrap up by talking about Moon Knight number 6 from Marvel. Once again, if you want to hear this full episode of War Rocket Ajax, tune in Monday. But for now, enjoy this clip. Okay, we both read Grayson number 2. Chris, what did you think of the second issue of this new spy series?
I loved it. I really did. I really liked the first issue of this comic, and the second issue, just continues to be better. I am someone who has always been a fan of the sort of weirder pieces of comic book universes, particularly the DC universe. I think if you read Ask Chris or you watch Here's the Thing, you know that that's kind of my jam, is the DC universe that has all this weird bits and pieces that evolve over the years. Which is one of the things I had a big problem with the New 52 as a fan, because it took away all those pieces and replaced them with worse pieces. Grayson is a book that is taking so many of those pieces back and sort of putting them in the same book. It's not just Spiral and St. Hadrian's College, but they're trying to work in the Midnighter and the God Garden and stuff like that in a way that I didn't expect to be as good as it is in the first issue. And then you also get references to Argus and Checkmate and other stuff that's happening around the DC universe. And it feels like one of those books from the late 90s or the early 2000s from DC, where there were people who were experimenting with dealing with a bunch of different stuff. It works really well. It's really compelling. Seeley and King do an amazing job with the characters of Dick Grayson and Helena Bertinelli, and also Batman. There's a really fantastic Batman scene at the end of this.
It's not that Tumblr Batman, for lack of a better term, that is constantly a dick, or a jerk, I should say, since
yes.
the lead character of this book is literally a dick. A jerk to everyone around him all the time. This is a Batman that, is willing to actually admit that he has memories and emotions, which is refreshing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I like that it's not just one of those things where a lot of times, with the Judd Winnick books or Devin Grayson, when she was writing Gotham Knights, would kind of manufacture these emotional moments that always ring really hollow to me. I've written before, I'm not a big fan of Judd Winnick's work on Batman, particularly with how he relates to the other characters. The way that it plays out here is really good, and it's a guy who really has a lot on his mind, and then is kind of forced by Dick Grayson to sort of take a moment and acknowledge his feelings, which I think is, again, that's kind of Dick Grayson's superpower in this comic. Dick Grayson is honest and friendly, and that, is his strength as a character. And I think it really works out. I think it's really, really good stuff.
I had no idea that this book was going to be so deeply the spiritual follow-up to Batman Inc. But it really is. And not just in the characters who appear, which is the characters and the settings that appear, which absolutely make it. I mean, Dr. Netz is in this, after all. Not only in that, but in terms of the tone of the book, in terms of the way it approaches these characters, and in terms of the way that it's very far-reaching. It's honestly kind of risky to take a book that's named Grayson, like the title of this book is Grayson, and really broaden the focus as widely as this has done in its second issue. Because there's a lot of tentacles to this book. Like, everything eventually comes back to Dick Grayson as the central character. But there's a lot of stuff going on in a lot of different corners. There's a lot of places that get checked in with, in this one issue.
I think it's obvious that that Seeley and King, and we talked to Tim Seeley about this, are dudes that really like a lot of the pieces that Grant Morrison was playing with in Batman Inc. It's more than just being like, oh, we're going to use Spiral. Oh, we're going to have the Hood show up. It really is a feeling that comes through in this comic, which I think it's really, really great. I'm really excited about Grayson. I haven't been excited about Nightwing in a couple of years, so I am very excited about this book. Now, Matt, you wanted to talk a little bit about a book that you did not like so much this week.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the new comic, the new #1 issue from Top Cow, which, before I get any deeper into this, first I just want to say, good on Top Cow for hanging in there, Top Cow is still...
for sticking around after all these years.
Still around. That said, this new series, which is called Genius, co-written by Marc Bernardin, who you may know from lots of TV stuff, and Adam Freeman. And the artist is an artist named, I don't know if I'm saying the first name correctly, Afua, I'm not sure, Afua Richardson. We talk a lot about comics being stealth scripts for TV shows and movies, right? I do not know if I have ever seen one as blatant as this.
Well, have you read Thief of Thieves?
I have not read Thief of Thieves.
Okay, then by all means continue.
I did not read that comic that got promoted for a while a couple years ago, which I believe was called Horror.
Oh,
which outright said that it was aiming to become a TV show.
Those dudes still hanging on to that banner at Comic-Con 2014, by the way. I don't know if you saw it.
They were there. I saw them.
See, it's ironic, though. It's an ironic thing.
That's right. Let me give you the premise of this comic. A young woman named Destiny. There's some meaning in that name, Chris.
Is there?
Don't even joke. There's some meaning in that name. She's a 17-year-old young woman. She has taken over the entire LA gang scene. And Chris, do you remember how LA had tons of gang stuff going on in the 90s? You remember all the riots and all the gang stuff that was happening in LA in the 90s?
Yeah, I played Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. That's still happening now in this comic. Imagine that kind of setting. She is a secret genius. To make it in school, she had to hide her smarts. There's an actual panel in this comic where she's taking a test, where one of the test questions is, who were the Axis powers? Or which one of these countries was not one of the Axis powers? And she had circled the correct answer, erased it, and circled an incorrect answer to hide how brilliant she is.
Okay, but not brilliant enough to do that the first time.
Yeah, she had circled Portugal, erased that, and left what is clearly a sign that she had answered Portugal to begin with. And then she circled Germany. But then there's a scene right after that where she goes into a room and she sees a kid playing chess on a computer. And she's like, oh, how does that work? And the kid shows her how to play chess and says the most powerful piece on the board is the queen. And she says, I think I like this game. That is the level of discourse we're working with here. Chess as a... I feel like... Look, I don't want to trash Marc Bernardin and Adam Freeman too much in this, but it really feels like a couple of dudes watched The Wire and were like, oh, let's make a comic out of something like that, but make it kind of a high concept thing with a girl who's really smart taking charge. Here's how I knew that this comic really wasn't trying that hard. The very first page is just a big info dump of description, not unlike like a scene setting in a script, right? It's even in a script font. It's even in Courier, right? It's just like written out as though this is all being written to like a brigadier general in the I'm assuming the National Guard. The word it talks about the gang populace in the third caption on the page. Populace is spelled Populous.
Oh dear.
You know populace the adjective instead of populace the noun?
Well, look at the adjective. Play.
Look at the adjective, populace.
That's really weird, because I was going to mention this. I forgot to mention it. There are weird typos in Grayson this week, too. I mean, I love the comic, but there's a couple of weird lettering mistakes or typos. Like it's going around, man.
Editors need to get on their game, my friend. But, like, the art in this book looks really nice. It is also not a sequential comic. It is clearly like what is meant to be the first act of a pilot episode. I appreciate that it's about a woman, like a young woman, being at the center of the comic, who is, taking over all the gangs. And there's like never a scene where it's like there's a discussion about like, oh, she's so cool and she's a girl. It's just kind of accepted that she's tough and can take over games and be a woman at the same time, which is a nice approach. But that's like pretty much the only really positive thing I have to say about this comic. Everything else
I have two questions.
Is a cliche. Okay, hit me with your two questions.
One, you said this is about a girl who's a secret genius taking over all the gangs.
Right.
Are you sure you read a comic book and didn't just play Saints Row 2?
I could have.
Second question, how much more would you like this comic if it was called Secret Genius?
Probably no more, but it would be a more apt title.
Okay. So it doesn't sound very good.
It does not. It is not.
But the third comic this week.
The third comic we're going to talk about is very good, and that is Moon Knight number 6. This is Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey's last issue on the book before it is handed over to Brian Wood and Greg Smallwood. And every issue of this comic that I've read has been great, and this might be the best of them.
I really need to catch up. I am behind on that book, and I loved the first couple issues so much.
Well, I still can't necessarily say that I liked this issue more than I did issue 3, which was Moon Knight beating the crap out of ghost punks.
We talked about that.
Which is like tailor-made for me as a comic book. That said, this issue is about a cop who has been constantly told his entire life that he will never amount to anything, becoming the new Black Spectre, going on a mission to become Moon Knight's new arch nemesis. And some of the stuff that gets done in this comic, like in less capable hands, some of the scenes in this comic would come off as really gratuitous and bad. For instance, this cop who becomes the new Black Spectre kills his wife. There's a thing that's established where he throws darts, and that's kind of like his weapon of choice. The scene where he kills his wife is just like basically a shot from her point of view and him kind of casually throwing a dart toward the camera or like toward the reader. That's it. That is all you get. And it's such a subtly played scene. It's really nicely done. I'm sure it's a combination of script and art, but something that could have been like really terribly gratuitous ends up being kind of nicely understated. Then, after that understated scene, we get a scene where Black Spectre stands in front of an exploding car and Moon Knight just wrecks him. Wrecks him to pieces. Like he becomes Black Spectre for a minute, and then Moon Knight tears him apart. And then at the very end, we get what seems to be Warren Ellis's kind of mission statement about Moon Knight. And then he's done. He is done with the series. I feel like these 6 issues of Moon Knight have been kind of a clinic for how to write concise, well-done, single-issue comic stories. Every single issue has been great. In writing, in art, in coloring, Jordie Bellaire is amazing. Everything has just been really good. I love these 6 issues of Moon Knight. That does it for another early edition of War Rocket Ajax here on ComicsAlliance.com. Tune in for the full episode of War Rocket Ajax at WarRocketAjax.com on Monday to hear not only this comic segment, but our interview with our guest, Jeremy Whitley of Princeless and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Also, we're going to be adding some new comics to our Every Story Ever list, doing checks and recs and all that other regular stuff we do. Thanks for listening to the War Rocket Ajax early edition. See you next week.